Welcome to From Head to Heart and Home. We're excited to have you listen in on our conversations. This is a channel created by women for women to take intentional action to create the life you want, with your hosts, Shanda Soretti, certified coach, and Carla Center, relationship coach and subconscious healer. So today, I'm so excited. We're going to talk about how you manifest pain in your body with emotions.
Mm,
And this is one of the things that was my main focus for years in my practice. And so I'm really excited that we're going to talk about this today, because who would think that things happening in your life are causing the pain that you and your doctors, your massage therapists can't figure out what's going on?
yeah.
And I'm going to let Shanda start.
All right. So I love this. I'm excited that we're doing this. And it's just in total alignment with what we talk about here. We're always trying to help our listeners gain more understanding about what's going on with their bodies, right? And the first way that we're able to do that is really to get out of our head and get into our body and simply just feel what's happening for us. So, emotions, if you guys have not heard this yet, are literally is energy in motion, right? So what happens when we have trauma or undesirable circumstances or something happens to us, we block the processing and the releasing of certain emotions. So let's just say fear shows up and something happens, and instead of letting fear run its process and go through our body and be released, we hold on to it and we store it. So we literally store these emotions in our body, and depending on what emotion it is, there tend to be certain parts of the body where they get stored. So since Carl and I talk a lot about trauma, and we were talking about this before we hopped on too, trauma is typically stored in our hips. So is anger, typically stored in our hips. So if you are interested in learning more about that, you can go look at the Chinese traditional medicine, because they talk a lot about that specific areas. I also did some studying around something called woundology, and it's not really anything you can find online. It was more through my certification, but woundology being, depending on where you're holding your pain, that pain is trying to communicate something to you, right? So there's certain questions that you can ask that body part in order to help with the releasing. So um yeah, I think it's so important to take a moment and to tune into our bodies, because I can, for one, tell you that riddled with pain, physical pain in my body. And whenever I've gone to doctors or gotten, CAT scans or x-rays, like there's nothing physically wrong with my body, my bones, my joints, nothing like that. I go to physiotherapy, I go to osteo as well. And they're the ones that can usually find the more tissue related things, which is where emotion is stored, is in the fascial and tissue area, which is so cool because it's energetic, right? So, Carla, do you want to add anything to that?
Well, and so during certain moments in trauma, this is part of, so I was my training was done by a chiropractor. Like, he was really trying to understand where stuff came from too, because he was working with the spine and getting everything, but people kept, and he's a holistic doctor, kept coming back the same. So he found the research where when we're in a trauma, it stops at a certain point. It's called T9, before like our body is like, it's basically death. It can't, and it stores it, right? So those points are stored throughout your body. So if something is bringing up that trauma, the pain is going to come in those areas. It's not just the emotions come up. We think of the tears or PTSD, but our body does react as well. It does, because it's storing all these little points of the things that have happened to our life that were so overwhelming, that, that moment where you're like so overwhelmed, you can't even fully remember all that happened, even current stuff, and that's stored in the body, in the tissues. And so that's one of the reasons why you go to the doctor, and they're like, I have the same thing as Shanda, and I know many women that have, where they're like, there's nothing there, and you're like, I'm not crazy. That pain is there. You don't understand.
Mm.
And they're like, well, I don't see anything. And then you're like, there's got to be something wrong.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's so frustrating too when you find yourself in that place where you've gone, through the tests that hopefully are going to give you the information so that you can at least be proactive and take action to heal. But then when you're caught in that space where they can't see what you're talking about, right? And if that right there doesn't tell you the energetics behind what Carla and I are talking about, then I don't know what will, because
Right.
it's something that cannot be seen on CAT scans or on X-rays or any of those types of
Yeah.
testing. It's something that needs to be done energetically through processing, through releasing, through acknowledging, even, right? Like feeling it and tapping into what that emotion is. And again, Carl and I were talking about this before we press record, but about yin yoga. That is a thing for a reason. So, for those of you who don't know about yoga, it's you get into yoga positions for about 4 minutes, I think is the typical number, 2 to 4 minutes, something like that. And you hold these positions so that you can sink deeper and deeper into these positions to relax into, but also to release any of the stored traumas or information or emotions that are in your body. And personal experience, once again, I love to lead with that. I have gotten into some positions where I've actually felt an emotional release to the point of crying, right? Or sobbing, like not even being able to hold that in anymore because the position is literally pulling it out of you. It's really powerful. So I would recommend people try that as a starting point. And also know that we're all so unique and individual that there's no one way to find the relief that we need. Um, so have an open mind and explore while you're going through these processes. Also, just journaling. Maybe you're not somebody who wants to try physical movement yet because it's just too painful at this point. Fit journal, right? Write down the area, pinpoint exactly where you're feeling it, and then start asking questions like, what does this pain want me to know? What does it feel like? What is the sensation? Is it hot, cold? Like, there's all these really cool questions that you can ask to really go deeper with the inquiry. And just by sitting with it and acknowledging it, you will experience some relief.
Right. And acknowledging the fact that we have patterns built into us from childhood that we don't acknowledge our emotions
Mm,
until they're really big. And so those are the ones that we acknowledge happen. If it's like something's built up, um, because in my generation, we were told if you want something to cry about, I'll give it to you. So we wouldn't
mm,
cry, right? Like if you were upset, you didn't do it, like until you hit a point where you can no longer hold it in. And that's what our body's telling us is I can't hold this in anymore.
yeah.
I'm in pain. I need you to do something about this.
Yeah, and when we avoid acknowledging certain things, I think this is really important for people to understand is that our pain is there for a reason. Okay. It starts subtly to the point where we might not even notice it, but eventually it grows and it grows and it grows to get your attention. And don't kid yourself, it will continue to grow until you pay attention to it. So if you have little tweaks in your body or this physical pain in your body, don't let it get to the point where it's actually limiting you physically in your movement. Take action, be curious. And when you're going through like the inquiry where you're asking questions, I think it's really important because the reason why we've likely stored the emotion is because we didn't feel safe. So, very important to set the groundwork ahead of time that you are safe, you're in a safe space, nothing is going to happen to you, you're not reliving anything, you're here to help, right? So, talking to your body, if you need to talk out loud and actually speak the words out loud, go ahead. If you can't do that or don't want to do that, do it inside of your head, that's fine too, but really creating that safe space so that your body can relax and allow you in to seek those answers that you're trying to find.
Right. And if you're feeling so tight and you're like, I don't feel safe right now, allow yourself to think of where have you felt the safest in your life. This is what
Mm,
I do with my clients. Where have you felt the safest at your in your life? And then envision yourself there and bring all your senses into it. Smell it, hear it, taste
Yeah.
it, all of it. And get yourself in that space. And that will allow you to feel safe enough to start doing that, to
Mm.
start letting it out in your journal if you're not ready for the physical. Um, and if you don't do yin yoga, it's somatic medicine. That's what it's called, somatic medicine. And you can find different things does somatic medicine, because maybe some people are like, I can't do yoga. That's what they've convinced themselves of. So find something, because you're going to still be doing something similar to yoga when you do somatic medicine, because it's all physical. It
Yes.
has to do with movement. It has to do with your muscles. And you would be surprised, as women, we have so much trouble with our hips, and they're like, well, it's bursitis, it's this, it's that from having kids.
Mm.
And it's stored emotion. It's
Yeah.
stored emotion. And there's been excuses as to what it is so that it can just be let go. But when you use things to open up your hips and release those emotions, and when you cry, you don't necessarily feel the emotional pain. I found myself, it just starts sobbing, and you're like, but it feels good. It feels
Yes.
feel the release.
Yeah.
And my clients say the same thing. You feel that release.
Yeah, it's definitely not something like in my experience anyway, when using these somatic tools where I don't feel like I'm really living anything. I don't even feel like I'm being affected in a negative way. It's like I might feel the sadness, maybe, but even more so, it's just this I get completely overtaken by the wave of that emotion
Right.
without affecting me in any sort of way. So it's just releasing it and letting it go. And like Carla was saying, it's getting out of our head where all of those thoughts and sentences are, because really to let go, those don't even matter in a sense, right? We can just get into our body, locate where it is, and process it and let it go. And another really interesting way that might be beneficial for some people that I just thought of as we were talking about this, Carla, is EFT. So emotional freedom technique, which is tapping.
Mm-hmm.
So there's points on your body where you actually tap and you can use affirmations to release things as well and reframe some things, which also is another tool that I got to learn through my certification. And it's really cool. It's really powerful. But again, all of the tools, by the way, that we share are available for free. You can probably find them on YouTube somewhere. But if you ever want to go more in depth with anything that Carl and I share, please feel free to reach out to us so that we can connect with you and explore what that could look like for you personally, in using those modalities a little deeper.
Exactly. And know that if something doesn't feel right, is it doesn't feel like the right modality to you, there are others. That's why Shanda and I know so many modalities, because
Mm.
we wanted to make sure not only doing for ourselves, but that we had the tools to help our client with what works for them, right? So know that, don't, because with medicine you can feel like nothing's going to work for me, right? And so the reason I bring it up is to understand, okay, we tried something, it didn't feel right for you, there's something else that will work for you. Because like
Mm.
EFT, some people love the tapping, and you get to the spaces where the energy's stuck, and while you're doing those affirmations, you're releasing that energy, and you've found by the different points where that's done. And some people, it could be that they don't believe in tapping, but it could just be that, like, that's not what they feel in flow with, right? And so then you just say, hey, this doesn't feel right for me, and try something else.
Mm.
Don't give up just because one modality didn't work for you. If you're out searching or you've come with us, say something to us. We can probably even suggest something else, because
Yeah.
we know a lot. We've been trained in a lot, and because we've gone in with our heart, and we know what it feels like to feel stuck. Like, that's how I learned holographic manipulation therapy. I didn't learn it to be a coach, but I had been diagnosed with rheumatoid arthritis. I couldn't use my hands. I couldn't walk, and I was frustrated. I was in my 40s. I'm like, I can't do this. Like, I
Mm.
have a long life to live. I can't be this way. And I didn't the steroids and all, I got steroid shots. I did chemotherapy. None of that stuff worked. And my gut said, this isn't going to work for you. but I released some trauma. And next thing you know, like my anxiety, you hold it in your stomach, by the way. You have stomach problems. There's something going on in there. There's something
Mm-hmm.
going on in there. And all of a sudden, I could use my hands again. I could walk again. I could do things again. And it was stored trauma from my childhood. And I was like, how the heck can that be?
Mm-hmm.
Like when you experience it, it's a big like, wow,
Yeah. Yeah,
wow.
I remember when I first learned about this too, and like my brain immediately wanted to be like, no way, nope, like that's impossible. And I was like, no, we're going to stay open to this because that's just the way I am. And I love learning new things, especially now being a coach so that I can bring more to my clients. But I stayed open to it and I was just like, this is so fascinating. And there was a part of me that was so feeling with every single part of my body, like, of course, this is true. Of course, this
Right.
is it. Like, how can this not be the truth? And it was like this inner knowing without even needing to understand the whole process, right?
Right.
And when you said, Carla, it's something about when some clients say to you sometimes, nothing's going to work for me, or we'll hear people say, like, this isn't going to work. The only thing that's not going to work for you is telling yourself, this is not going to work for me.
Yes.
The mindset. If you do not believe that it'll work for you, then it won't. You will literally work against it. But if you're going to open up to, hey, maybe this will work, even just that sentence is way more supportive than this isn't going to work. And like Carla said, using your own intuition to discern whether this is the right tool for you or not, because there's a plethora of tools to pick from. So you don't have to feel pigeonholed into only choosing one or two. I am the type of person I'm like, try them all, right? Try them
Yes.
all and see what works. Like I've tried so many things as well for my pain and my discomfort. And like Carla, I was in my early 30s and I remember waking up in the morning and my body was just riddled with so much inflammation that getting up out of bed and walking down the stairs was a task. At
Yeah.
30 years old, I'd have to brace the walls and go down the stairs so slowly because my joints were so inflamed. And so I've done my own healing work around that as well. And it's awesome when you can be on the other side of that. And knowing that when you have flare ups, right? If flare ups still happen, it's like, whoa, hang on a second. What's going on in my body, right? You become more in tune with your body and you communicate better. It's like having an open line of communication. When we can feel and allow ourselves to feel the discomfort, we can gain the information. And I want to add one more thing around this because I learned something recently. So I shared earlier that I'm going to an osteo and she's been helping me with so much, right? Because sometimes my pain jumps around. So we'll fix something and then it shifts somewhere else because I'm not getting to the root of the actual emotion under it. So there's that. But there's also I'm forgetting what I was going to say. Oh no. There's also something else to it, which hopefully I remember what that is and share it with you. But I'm going to pass it over to Carla for a second because I'm brain farting.
Okay. Well, and the thing is that sometimes sometimes you get relief and you're like, but it came back, and that's because what Shanda was talking about. You are not getting to the root.
Hmm.
Okay, because there are many layers, and if
Hmm.
there is you're focused on one thing, but it is just like middle of the onion, it's going to heal itself, right? You haven't killed the center core of it. And that's the thing about it. So say, and you'll feel better as you peel back the layers. Don't get me wrong, but then I don't ever want anybody to be discouraged because you're like, oh, but well, that's because we haven't yet gotten to the root. And it took you years to get here. It's not going to
Hmm.
take you 5 seconds to get away.
Yeah.
You have to have patience with yourself. You have to know that there are multiple things you've held in your body. You've put off this energy for a very long time to get to a point where you're like, I'm miserable. I have to do something about it, because that's
Yeah.
how we are. We like to just let it get to where we can't take it anymore before we take action. I mean, we
Hmm.
talk about taking action all the time. So just know that, like, sometimes you have to calm it. You have to get in down a layer and then another layer before you get to your root cause.
Yeah. So now I remember what I was going to say, and it was around we become accustomed to the pain. So it's not that the pain gets better over time, okay? But we learn how to live with that pain. And you guys, if you just heard what I said, we learn how to live with this pain and this disease and this discomfort. We don't need to do that. We don't need to carry this around. So, what can happen, and this is why I wanted to share my osteo story, was because I had relieved a while back some pain that I had been carrying for a really long time, and I had never felt the relief of that. And we did some deep work, and feeling that pain was amazing. First of all, I was like, wow, like I feel so different. And then I noticed, oh, wow, this other thing feels wonky. And so we got talking about that. And she's like, it's very common because your pain will override other pain. So the one that is the strongest kind of minimizes the rest. So we don't even know all of the discomfort we have in our body. We could be riddled from head to toe, but we're only able to experience that one major one because that's the threshold, right? We only have the capacity to feel so much pain. So what I wanted to really kind of share was don't become accustomed to your pain, right? And as you heal, don't be surprised, kind of like what Carla was saying, if you experience more discomfort in other areas, right?
Yeah.
Until you start to heal that root and heal it all the way to the end. Because if you can, I find that this is what happens to most people is that they make traction in their healing, and so they'll see the benefits of that, whether it's in their physical body or finances or relationships or whatever it is, but they don't go all the way to the finish line. They stop when they start to get the progress. And then it's only a matter of time before things come rushing back in again and they slip back to the old patterns or behaviors, right?
Right. Because we're in a space where like, well, this is better than where I was.
Right.
Almost like we're not deserving of making it to the finish line. And
Right.
it it's amazing to be in a space where you feel more joy than you feel pain. I will tell you that right now. And but we become so accustomed to the pain that that's what we expect in life. We
Yeah.
expect the pain physically, mentally, emotionally, and also in our finances and in our, every aspect of our life.
Hmm. Yeah. And I want to share too, because I have a son who's just turned 9. And when I was 30, he was just a little young fella. But I remember being so uncomfortable in my body with the pain that I had that even just like playing with him and engaging with him or getting on the floor was so uncomfortable that sometimes I wouldn't do it. I'd say, no, no, mommy can't, but I'll watch. Right. And so think of the opportunities, the experiences that we're missing out on by staying in our discomfort, by being okay with our pain, by you know I want to almost say like acclimating to it, like you know what I mean, like we get to live a higher caliber of life than what we're living currently. It's right there. You just have to say yes to yourself. You have to know that you're worthy of that. You have to know that it's possible for you, and you have to be committed to not giving up.
Right. Right.
Because I can go out, and we were just doing it last night. Soccer season starting, so we got out the soccer nets and the soccer ball, and all three of us ran around and played soccer, and it just felt so good to be able to enjoy and create those memories with my son and with my family.
Right. And he's not afraid to go ask you to do things
Right.
because you may say you're hurting, or you might go do it and then he sees you in pain. Because that's the
Mm.
other thing is sometimes we'll trudge through it and then our children see
Yeah.
that pain in our face and they experience that from us and they don't want to ask. They
Mm.
don't want to connect to us in that way because we we have shown them that it's not okay for us to be in that
Right.
space.
And the other thing, what are we teaching our children when we push through things like that, when we avoid that type of healing work or avoid that type of personal attention that we need? What are we teaching them? That we need to push through these things, right? There are, now, don't get me wrong, there are things that we do need to push through, like discomfort when it comes to growth, but not through our pain and our physical stored emotion, right? That's about grace and space and love and tenderness. It's total opposite of pushing through anything. That's why it's stored in the first place, right? Is because we tried to stuff this thing down. We were, I want to use the word like aggressive, like trying to just pretend it's not there, trying to stuff it, right?
Right. And I've had many people, and I know that I've experienced it where they're like, for them, it's like I'm shoving it down in the box and now my box is too full, right?
Yeah.
Because they have learned to stuff away the emotions and eventually it does. And they don't recognize that it's coming out in physical pain. They just know when all of a sudden the emotional stuff is about to erupt, which
Mm.
is just like having one of those the switch to open up the steam, right? You got to let a certain amount of steam out and that's all it's doing, but it's still in there to build up and you're not healing it.
Yeah. And what happens too, interestingly enough, there's been many documentaries and science behind this, is that when we allow the pain and the physical pain to fester long enough, it will transmute into other things. It will create bigger problems, again, to get your attention. There's been stuff around cancer coming from stored emotion and stored trauma in the body. How mind blowing is that? And I'm not saying it's true or false because I'm not a doctor or a researcher or a science, or a science or a
Scientist.
scientist. But what I'm saying is that there's enough proof and evidence out there to point in those directions. And so if, I mean, if you're curious about that, go watch some documentaries around that too. It's fascinating. It's so fascinating.
And there's a ton of documentaries. You
Yes.
won't have a hard time finding them because there's a
No.
lot of research around it because they're trying to see where is our emotions, our traumas causing all of the physical things
Yeah.
because we've been in a place where we're band-aiding it, we're trying to cure it, but we haven't looked at the root cause.
Right.
And they're seeing emotions are correlating with a lot of these physical ailments that people are having, even the ones that can be seen on an MRI, a CT scan, an X-ray, all of that.
Hmm.
And if you also look at, you'll see people that your immune system is in much better shape when you are releasing your emotions. You're not full of stress and cortisol from, because cortisol is, if you want to see something that shows up physically that they can measure when your emotions aren't being dealt with, aren't being released, look at the cortisol level.
Yeah.
And many of us have like super high because we're in fight or flight all the time, right? Because we're just trying to survive and not processing the emotions.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's another thing too, a modality that you guys can check out that I just thought of again. And I remember when I watched this documentary, I was like, this is so interesting. It's around grounding. And when you think of the way that we live today, typically most people, we wear rubber soles, right, on our shoes. So our shoes are not connected to the earth and they're actually blocking us from that connection. We're on technology, right? So like things that are emitting high frequency and all this stuff and all these different waves. We live indoors, so we're not in as much daylight as what we used to get. We're just disconnected. And all of this plays a part in our balance within our body and the things that our body naturally needs to create that homeostasis within ourselves, right? And all of these things help with the emotion, the release, and the healing, right? So it's like I envision a world where we do this like 360 healing, meaning it's not just about how we move. It's not just about what we eat. It's not just about if we get outside or don't get outside, but it's like this whole 360 kind of encompassed way of living where we take all of the elements and we create a life based around what our body needs naturally. So grounding was what I was getting at with this. And there's a documentary, and I can't remember what it's called right now. If I can find it, I'll put it in the links below. But and we're not affiliated with anybody either, you guys. So we're not trying to sell products. We're just trying to give you information to go do your
Right.
own research and find tools that work for you. But these grounding mats, you can get things for your bed where it could be like a sheet set that you plug into the wall and you ground yourself as you sleep overnight. It's so cool. There have been people, actually, they do it in the documentary too, where they will measure the radiation, I think it is, going through your body while you're holding on to a phone.
Hmm.
And then you put the phone down and you step on the ground with your bare feet. That's another way you can ground for free, by the way. Step outside on the ground barefoot. And the change in what's happening in your body is unreal. It is so cool.
Right. And they also call it earthing too. So
Oh,
there's it's
that's what
it's
it's
grounding and earthing.
that's what it's called. The documentary is called Earth or Earthing, something like that.
Yeah. And you see a lot of people that don't go barefoot. I am always barefoot. I have been since I was a child, and people are like, "Aren't you going to put shoes on?" And the answer is no. I
Mm,
will if I'm going someplace, but it does help. Like when we talk about going outside and going for walks in nature, that's you connecting with the earth. But you can also go outside and just stand on the
yeah.
bare earth, not on the concrete, on the bare earth, and give yourself a few minutes, allow yourself to breathe and see how much better you feel.
Hmm.
Because so if you want to look up the cell phone stuff, look up EMF. Look that up and see the difference. And people are like, well, we're not as healthy as we were. Well, yeah, because we're doing a lot of
Yeah.
things that we have made and stop doing the things that are connecting us to where we came from. We came from the earth. I mean, we're cellular like everything around us, and we're not doing that connection
Hmm.
with, I mean, it we used to be on farms and we used to be in forests and we used to do all of that stuff and really just be connected. And that allows you to process that energy too.
Yeah. Yeah, I say if I can look at my feet at the end of the day and my feet are dirty or my nails and my hands are dirty, I'm like, that is a day well spent, my friend, because it means I was outside in the dirt doing the things, connecting with Mother Nature and Mother Earth like we are supposed to be, right? We are earthly beings, right? And like Carla said, this is how we've just become so disconnected from our natural way of being, and we've created these wonderful technologies and tools and such, but unfortunately they've also further removed us from these things, the natural things that support our longevity and our overall well-being, right? So I feel like we went on a complete tangent with this, but this is great.
Yeah. Oh, I love it. And it just makes me think, I mean, how many people love to garden
Right.
and love to grow plants? And that's why, because we're not getting enough of the stuff that allows us to process our emotions, to process our energy. And so we're unconsciously reaching out in other ways.
Mm,
So there are the modalities we're talking about, but there's also, so what if you went out and you journaled? You're sitting out on the earth journaling some of this.
yeah.
What would that look like for you? You know, do you have to sit lotus style on the ground? No. Sit yourself in a chair, get your bare feet flat on the ground and do some journaling. Take in some of the sunshine and allow yourself, where's this pain? Where's it located? And see what comes up for you.
Yeah. Yeah, totally. And you could even do something where you're laying on the ground too,
Mhm.
like earth pulsing, which is really cool. So you just lay down and it's like as if you melt into the earth and you're one with the earth, and you try to connect like your heartbeat with the earth's heartbeat. And it's really, really cool. Yeah, so as you can tell, there's so many tools and modalities to try. This is like, I love this type of stuff because I mean, I live where I live for a reason, in the woods with a river and animals and all that stuff, because this is what brings me joy. And since I moved to the woods, oh, 6 years ago, my life has changed. I love being home. I love coming home, I call it my oasis, right? Like where I live lights me up. And that is very important to me. It's a non-negotiable.
Right. And it's so, as you all know, I was just on a trip and I was surrounded by a lot of negative energy, which can cause illness, just
Mm,
in case you didn't realize that. And every night I would leave, I had a balcony room on this ship on my cruise and leave the door open to listen to the ocean because my favorite thing in the whole wide world is the ocean.
yeah.
I love beaches. I love just the sound of, I can just lay on the beach and listen to the sound of waves and be more calm than any other time in my life. And so having those days that were so stressful as far as like people complaining and all of that stuff, which I have no control over, right? I have no control. I have control of how I process that. And then spending, the first thing I did was go out, open that, and listen to, was I touching the earth? I wasn't, but I was taking in the air and the
Mhm.
sound because all five of our senses are very important.
Yeah.
And so it rejuvenated me. It allowed me to let go of anything that those other people's energy was triggering for me.
Hmm. Yeah. Yeah.
Otherwise, I wouldn't have been walking at the end of it.
Right. Yeah, for sure. And I think that's great. I love that you shared that it's not just about physical touch, right? When it comes to um it like embodying or grounding or just being in tune with the things, we can use all of our senses. It's a sensory experience. And
Yeah.
I know I was just sharing about where I live, and I'm so grateful for where I live and the life that I've created, which also is available to you. But if you're someone who doesn't live in the woods, maybe you wish you did, maybe you're in the concrete jungle, as we call it, you're in town, in an apartment, maybe you don't have the green space around you, create even a nook for yourself in your home. Get one plant, put it beside your bed, put it by your couch, put it somewhere where you can enjoy it, but bring it into your home. And if you live with other people, that's okay. I'm sure you have a bedside table or a little shelf somewhere or something, a dresser that you can make your own and bring in the pieces so that you can create your own little oasis just right there.
Right.
Right. So it doesn't have to be elaborate and big. It can be as small as you need it. It could even just be as simple as wearing a gemstone or a rock or a
Right.
feather around your neck, right? Like it can literally be anything, but it's the meaning that you make behind it and the connection that it allows you to experience that is important.
Right. And it helps bring peace while you're releasing those emotions. And like
Yeah.
even, I mean, Shanda has shown you her little altar. She brings the earth into her home.
Mm,
And you can, anybody can do that. And
yeah.
that's why I brought like the ocean and stuff up. I live in town and I have a super small backyard, so I do have a little bitty space to walk barefoot, but I don't have the woods, but I can bring stuff to me by choice. And Shanda, who has the forest surrounding her, does the same. Because when you're in your house, all of that stuff is going on. Your
Mm,
emotions happen, your stress happens.
mm,
And having it in there as one of the ways, that's one of the modalities, is being connected to the earth.
yeah. Yeah. Beautiful. Absolutely beautiful. I love it.
Oh. Do you have anything else you want to share?
The only thing that I really want to finish with is just kind of leaving you with a message, the listeners here today, and it's to not allow your pain to dictate your life and your experiences, right? Reclaim that personal power. It's already there. It's not lost, it's not gone. You've just forgotten and disconnected from it. So don't let that pain run your life. Okay. Carla and I are both examples of how you can change that and the impact that it has on your life and the lives of those around you is um it is like really immeasurable, right? Like you can't put a measurement on that because it's priceless. So take the action, pay attention to your body, and give yourself what you need to heal.
Right. Because we, whether we like it or not, we always create our reality and we always have control. So with
Right.
that connection, it's beautiful.
Mm,
And just reach out.
yeah.
We are happy to just like walk you through finding what's right for you.
Yeah.
And like I said, we've been doing it for a while, so we have a plethora of things we can share.
Mm,
Um, and if you think this will help anyone, please share. You
yes.
know, we're trying to share as much love and knowledge as we possibly can to make an impact on your lives. So share with those that you think this will help and subscribe so you get to see all of the different things that we share. And just know that this is always from our heart. And next week will be just as impactful. So we can't wait to see you. Bye for now.